The podcast started almost 18 years ago. And then it rapidly went to the top 25 in self-help. And then it also went to the top 10. I also got a bunch of feedback from longtime listeners saying, it'd be great to bring back some of the amazing guests that I had. And people like Mandy Kloppers and MJ Shaar, who were on multiple times. And also another wonderful professional that I met recently, Suzanne Clark.
So, but I love mentoring because we're investing in each other, and I love that.
We tend to always think that we have to look up the hierarchy to find our mentors. I looked down.
For me, mentorship is going on a road trip and having someone kind of in the passenger seat who's already done the drive.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the Life Habits Podcast. My name is Karel, and this is the podcast that offers mentoring and how to thrive at work, in health, and in life by developing new evidence-based habits. This is episode number 161, and the topic for today is Mentorship Reimagined, introducing new co-hosts and a new format. I'd like to welcome everybody back that has been a regular listener to this podcast, and also the new listeners and viewers as well. The podcast started almost 18 years ago, which in technology terms is the dark ages. It was before anybody else was doing this, right? The podcast was one of the first that was put on iTunes when the category of podcasting was made available. I started recording stories that I shared with people that I mentored in my place of work at IBM at the time, and there was a place to share those internally. When somebody suggested put this as a podcast on iTunes, I did, and then it rapidly went to the top 25 in self-help, and then it also went to the top 10. It was wonderful. We had a wonderful community of listeners that would provide feedback and suggest topics to address. And it was also the case that of all of the top 10 podcasts in self-help, this was the only one that wasn't professional, that didn't have advertising. It was a passion project. I had a day job. I didn't need to put advertising out there. But what did happen, though, is that after a few executive promotions, I ran out of a lot of time to be able to spend with the podcast. But then at the beginning of last year, I brought Paige Heron in, and she had done college studies in radio and broadcasting, and so she was perfect to help with the podcast. We went to a weekly cadence again and largely interviewed book authors. And two things happened as a result of that. We did a whole year of weekly podcasts, but on reflection, we realized that that category of interviewing authors is rather crowded, with even the top podcasters doing that, interviewing authors. So that wasn't really what I started off wanting to do with this podcast. It was a different sort of format. And it's also the case that those of you who had listened to the episodes with Paige, with the disorder that she has, EDS, that got a lot worse, and she wasn't able to serve as a co-host anymore. So wanted to go back and rethink what we wanted to do with the podcast. And I got thinking about the original objective was mentoring, providing guidance and advice, responding to listeners' topics and questions and the like. I also got a bunch of feedback from longtime listeners saying, it'd be great to bring back some of the amazing guests that I had. And people like Mandy Kloppers and MJ Shaar, who were on multiple times. I think each of them were on 7 or 8 times on various topics. And also another wonderful professional that I met recently, Suzanne Clark, who brings additional new areas of expertise to the group of us. And we thought in a conversation together, what if we just have all three of them be co-hosts, regular co-hosts, be on every episode, be able to bring the various perspectives that each of us provides from our areas of expertise, and still focus on the very intense focus that we have on making sure that everything that we talk about is evidence-based, so that we're not just regurgitating other, latest trends or talking nonsense. And a lot of podcasts do. A lot of people follow those and all kinds of trends that are actually, I think, just fads. So we all are science-based in our various aspects of our expertise, and we intend to bring that to this session as well. We're all very busy, so we're not going to do weekly podcasts. We also want to make sure that we give you really good quality content. And so we're planning to do these episodes once a month, but we'll then ensure we have enough prep time to give you a really good episode. And we're also bringing in new sections of the podcast. I've always had quotes, as those of you who have listened to the podcast for many years know. We also want to bring in the latest research articles, for example, and talk about those and how they relate to your life. Also, debunking myths. There's a lot of myths to debunk, and in our areas of expertise, we're going to be focusing on those kinds of things. We'll still have guests every once in a while as well. We'll also, pivot based on the feedback we get from all of you as well. So the whole intent here is to also do video versions like we're doing today. We know that most podcasts are still listened to on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and the like, but a number of people have been asking for years for also doing video podcasts, which we're going to be making available as well. So I am super excited that we're now going to be getting together, these four friends really, and professional colleagues, to really get together and chat about things that can be really helpful to your life. And so wanted to have each of the co-hosts introduce themselves to you, even talk a little bit how we met. And also then after that, we do that, we're going to get into some other topics as well. But just wanted to go around the table, and we want to start with the person that is the newest to this group, and that is Suzanne Clark. And so let's start with Suzanne.
Thank you, Karel. If there's one thing I love, it's chance encounters. And my being here today is a bit a result of that. And, for you listening, maybe it's a chance encounter that you found this podcast and are listening to us today too. But I met Karel as he was delivering an amazing session on design thinking. And I went up to him at the lunch break and I had a couple of questions, and often come with questions. And we had a great exchange. We talked through lunch and then haven't stopped talking since, which is the best kind of encounter. I was at that session, and a mentor actually once told me, you're taking the time or investing the money, resources, time, whatever, to go to something. Go full in. Go with your full attention and, be entirely present. And I try to do that. And I also expect that there is amazing things held in the people that you're likely to encounter. So that's something that I've tried to carry with me, going into any interaction with sort of an explorer's heart. And it's not up to other people to tell you incredible things or for them to show you what they have to offer. It's for you to discover it in many ways. And so I'm so grateful for that encounter. And then when Karel introduced me to MJ and Mandy, it was fantastic as well. So that was, one interaction that has changed, and that approach has changed my life, certainly. So, a bit about me. I'm a linguist by training, but I've also studied law and English, and I like really diverse things. So my career has sort of been that. I'm interested in really different things. I run a management consulting firm. I work kind of at the intersections of leadership, governance, strategy, but I also love teaching. I teach in a graduate program at a business school. And just to make things interesting, I'm a relational artist too. So don't like to be put in boxes, I like to do different things, and I think that that makes life interesting. But as you'll find, over the course of our episodes, what I'm really interested in, and hopefully what I have a chance to ask about and to bring forward, are things related to human leadership, how we relate and connect to one another. I'm interested in AI, and also, how we show up at work and how we navigate our professional lives. So I am beyond excited to be here with these incredible humans and looking forward to today's chat and all of the conversations that continue from there.
And it's wonderful to have you, Suzanne. And I love that chance encounter that we had as well. And just so you all know where we are in the world, Suzanne and I are in Canada. I'm based in Toronto. She's based in Prince Edward County, which is a gorgeous, gorgeous setting.
Which is a great spot if you like doing outdoor things like swimming, biking, and running, which I do.
And even Ironman. Impressive accomplishments. Okay, let's move on to Mandy.
Hi, it's great to join such a lovely group of people. So thanks for including me. I'm really excited to share my skills along with the other three co-hosts. I think it's going to be fantastic, and I think the listeners are in for a real treat, combining all of our knowledge on the panel. I can still remember the first time you and I spoke, Karel. It was on Twitter, and I think it was 2009. I was trying to start up a text therapy online business, but that was way before anything digital was going on. So I was a bit ahead of my time. But yeah, you noticed that I was trying to start up something, and we got in touch, and we've been in touch ever since. And it's very rare for me to meet someone that I feel so connected to. But I felt like I've known you forever. I'm like a family member. So yeah, despite the fact that we are so far apart, I'm in the UK. It's really lovely. Maybe it's vibrational or otherworldly. I'm not sure what, but I'm very happy to have the connection, especially in a world where disconnection seems to be growing. A brief introduction about me. I'm a psychologist. I've got a background in law and sociology, and I run a mental health blog that does pretty well here in the UK. And the types of people I've worked with are, I've done corporate work, I've done disabilities, dementia, all the different types really, which has given me a really good understanding of human behavior, patterns and trends. And I'm mostly interested in improving people's quality of life and just trying to find ways to live in this tricky world. I think there's a lot of challenges for all of us, and sometimes we can feel quite alone. So I think if this podcast can help people feel less alone and to relate to some of the stories that we tell, I think that'll be wonderful. So yeah, I'm really happy to be a part of this.
Great to have met you all those years ago. And I'm no longer on Twitter because it actually is no longer what I think it should be. But last, but certainly not least, we'll move over to MJ Shaar and tell us a little bit about you.
Well, hi, everybody, and thank you for having me, Karel. It is an honor. We met in 2011. That was the year that I published my book, Smarts and Stamina. It was a book about how to improve all of our sleep, food, mood, and exercise in harmony. And my co-author, Catherine Britton, had worked with you at IBM, and she said, hey, he has a podcast. You might want to be a guest. So this is how we met for the first time. The sleep, food, mood, and exercise journey was really interesting. But as you said, I'm evidence-based, and that's a lot of research to keep up with. So over the years, I decided that I wanted to narrow it down. And what I encountered is that people would say, MJ, I've tried all the tips in the book, but I'm still an insomniac. Or, I know I need to exercise, I just hate to sweat. Or, I really have no time to cook healthy. And before I was a mom, I thought that was an excuse. Now that I'm a mom, I get it. But I yet have to meet people that will tell me, I've tried all the ways in the world to become happier or more positive or kinder, and I'm still the same grumpy jerk I was before. So I realized mood is the easiest entry point to better sleep, food, mood, and exercise habits. And inside of mood, the most impactful thing that we can do, and the simplest often as well, is to begin with kindness. Kindness brings us the biggest lift, and it also gives us the longest lasting lift out of all the research that we have so far. So now I am all in on kindness in the workplace. This is what I do. And it keeps me accountable. I love that it keeps me accountable because I have those, moments too, where I just want to tell people the way I'm thinking, and it's not always pretty, but We need to learn to, have more grace and be more empathetic and all of those beautiful things. And so it keeps me accountable. So I'm happy to join this team and bring a kindness perspective based in positive psychology because that's my background. And I hope that the listeners are on board with thinking that this is valuable, interesting, and brings beauty to the world.
I really love about working with you, MJ, is that we'll talk about some topic. I'll suggest some topic and you go and research it deeply. You come back with, you can write another book on it or whatever. I just think that when we're talking about evidence-based, you think that way. And so I think the master's in applied psychology, which is what where you graduated from, which, by the way, in terms of my background, starting off in doing my PhD in depression research, it also followed basically Martin Seligman, who did a whole lot of work on depression. And at one point he decided, you know what? Happiness is not just the absence of negative emotions. We really need to be looking at how do we increase the tonnage of happiness, is his line, with regard to focusing on understanding what makes people happy and what makes people kind and the like. And so MJ was one of the first graduates of that program, and I'm thrilled that he did that pivot, and so that we are now focusing more heavily on how to make life better, and that's going to be a key theme that we're working on here too. Why don't we now just move over to, we talk about this podcast being about mentoring. I want us just each of us to reflect a little bit on what mentoring means to us, maybe some examples of things that we think are relevant to share. And maybe I'll start off by saying that I like to debunk the myth that mentoring involves having one person that you talk to regularly, probably even in person, and whatever topics come up, you need to go deal with that mentor. That might be what is appropriate for you, but I think mostly you should probably have mentors for the topics that you want to get mentoring on. And so I find that it's at any one time, anybody could have 2 to 3 mentors, probably not more than that because you get rather unwieldy, but follow up and connect with people that you think are appropriate to talk to. I also really like to reinforce that it isn't necessarily having to have a conversation. So one of my mentors is Don Norman, who's a big leader in design, the field that I've been working in all these years. And he is now quite old, but he is my model of how to retire. He's retired 5 times, but he's still busier and more impactful with every year. And so he doesn't mentor me, but I observe his life and what kinds of things he does. And another key mentor of mine was Barack Obama. Barack Obama, I've never met the man. I've never talked to him, but he's taught me so much in being a silent mentor, in really following how he does his speeches, the speed with which he talks, the repeating key messages and the like. And I now use that in my keynote addresses and the like as well. So I like to think that this podcast is an example of that as well. We're not meeting with you individually sitting there right now. We're coming through your headset and the like, usually. And so it's somewhat one way, but we also want to encourage you to also give feedback back to us, and we'll give you some coordinates of how to do that a little later. But let me turn it over to Mandy. Maybe Mandy, you can share your thoughts on mentorship.
Yeah, sure. So in the therapy world, mentorship's slightly different. We call it supervision, but I guess there's a lot of overlaps between the two. I have supervision or mentorship. We have to have it every month, otherwise we lose our license or our accreditation. But I would be lost without my supervision because it can be quite an intense emotional job sometimes, and you really need to let off steam and speak to other people about, if you have a client that you're struggling with or you're not sure that you've used the right intervention. So it really is kind of almost like a grounding experience to have supervision, and I love having had a few different supervisors over the years. It's great because everyone has a slightly different approach to things. So I love it. In terms of mentoring at work, it's not so much. I do cognitive behavioral therapy, which is very evidence-based. And when we do supervision, it's all about theories and am I applying the right protocols, etc. But there are times where I did have a client who had social anxiety, so I was helping him with that. He initially couldn't even go sit in a coffee shop on his own. He used to get so stressed. Finally got him over that, took about 6 months. And then he went on his first date and he spilled soup all over her, which was not great. But they're now married. So that's a happy ending. And then in terms of me being mentored, it's a funny thing actually, because one of the podcasts we did, I think it was on resilience, and a lady contacted me. She lives in Chicago and told me about something that I'd said in the podcast. It just made such a big difference. And, we sort of live for those moments where somebody gets that aha, and you're like, oh, yes, that's just fabulous. And she came to the UK and we met up, and she ended up becoming a mentor to me on the digital marketing side of things and helping me with social media and all that kind of digital marketing stuff. So we've stayed great friends, and that was, very serendipitous, if that's the right word, through this podcast. So who knows what could happen and the amazing connections people could make through this. So yeah, but I love mentoring because we're investing in each other, and I love that.
I reinforce the desire for getting feedback, and like you got from that episode we did together. I've also had feedback on certain episodes. One person said save their marriage. Another person actually save their life because of what we're talking about on the podcast. That's phenomenal. That's way more worth it than any money I would ever make at work, sort of thing. And so the podcast has always been that for me. It's this connection that is really important. So fantastic. So let's move next to Suzanne.
Yeah, and as I'm listening to some of the threads in the conversation here, it really can be other people. And in fact, the very first mentor was a wise old friend. And so the word mentor actually came into the language from Homer's Odyssey. So there was a character called Mentor, and that was a friend to Odysseus, and he was, entrusted to help guide Odysseus' son. And it's an interesting word because it didn't become a verb in the English language until 1918, I think. But we talk about mentoring as it's, keeping that connection about someone that you can turn to. For me, mentorship is going on a road trip and having someone kind of in the passenger seat who's already done the drive. So you're still driving. You're responsible for, the wheel in the car, and you're going to make choices on where you're going to go. So you hold that responsibility, but you have someone to talk to be your witness to things, to help spot hazards. And it makes the journey brighter, kind of sharing it with someone. Sometimes we need to be heard. We need to talk to others. We need also to ask questions. And sometimes the value in having someone to do that to is you hear yourself asking that. And there's so much, and I know Mandy and MJ will have other things maybe in future episodes to talk about that relationship connection. But sometimes our mentors can also ask us questions that we aren't capable of in a moment asking ourselves. And there is that reciprocity as well. I do love what you were saying, Karel, about you don't need someone that has formally been assigned to you, as in this is going to be your mentor. And in fact, if that is the case for anyone, in their work situations where, a supervisor or otherwise says, oh, here, this is going to be your mentor, you might want to pause and just say, let's have a first meeting to make sure there's synergy, because you need trust for that relationship to be a good one. But again, going back to how the word came into language, the root etymologically, for those interested in the linguistic past, comes from a Proto-Indo-European root, men. And that still exists in our current English word mental. And it meant to think and have in mind. And in legal terms, mens rea from the Latin, guilty mind, but it's about the mind. And so mentorship, that still exists, that element of thinking and being in mind, but there is that kind of connection piece. In my life, mentorship has played a huge role. And in fact, you heard a little bit about the interesting things I studied. And I didn't know, what I wanted to do when I finally stepped out of university. And I made the decision to just take jobs where I felt like the person hiring me could be a mentor, that A, I trusted them, and B, that I believed they had an interest in helping to grow me and helping to support my evolution personally and professionally. And that led me to really different industries and sectors, but it hasn't steered me wrong, to be honest. And that has been the case. So it's a luxury to be able to maybe go into roles where you have that. Sometimes you just need to take the job that comes along. But I would say, reflecting on my own experience, that has been the difference maker. The people that have wanted to mentor and then sponsor, put into action to help me advance. And that shaped my career in an interesting way, I'd say. Informal mentorship as well, just like in leadership. Yeah, you have your formal leader in kind of a positional power, but you have informal leaders as well. And those can be people that are associates, people that you don't even realize that you are a mentor to, and vice versa. I did have an associate that I worked with who recently told me about a mentoring conversation she'd had. So she was just assigned a mentee, and she sent me a picture of her bookshelf, which had a framed public transit ticket from Toronto. And it was the GO Train Presto ticket. And I said, okay, interesting. And she said, yeah, that's the day when we met for dinner and we had a conversation, and you were kind of encouraging me to sort of step out of my comfort zone and say yes to things. And so she framed that. I had no idea that meeting had the impact it did, but she shared that picture and said that in her conversation with her mentee, she shared that and said, make sure that you have people around you that are going to encourage you and push you, gems as she calls them, and have a visual reminder in your office somewhere that can help that. And so that just happened just the other week, and I just love that. So I didn't realize that was a mentorship moment. me saying, yeah, you really got to say yes. But it is nice. And I've actually since then been thinking about how I can tell other mentors I've had, hey, you have been a mentor to me, even if you didn't realize it, because sometimes it goes unnoticed.
A wonderful story. And I think it also just reinforces that there are various aspects of our life that we can have mentorship improve upon. And we'll dig into each of those in the future episodes as well. So the work situation, rather than just being assigned one, actually identifying people that you want to have as a mentor. I've had phenomenal experiences like that. And the research evidence, just to be evidence-based here again as well, is that there was a meta-analysis, so a study of studies looking at 112 studies looking at the effectiveness of mentoring in academia, in the working world, in the personal life. That reinforced the power of mentoring in terms of improvement in behavior and attitude and mental health and the like as well. So we'll dig into various aspects of this over time. Okay, let's move over to MJ.
Yes, thank you. I want to debunk 2 myths about workplace mentorship. And now I'm going to go back to when I turned, it was 25 or 26 years old, something like that. I was very young, but I was a bank branch manager. I had been working at the regional office for that bank for a little bit, but they didn't put me there because I knew everything about the branch, because having been at the regional office, I knew nothing about how to run a branch. But I was bilingual. I'm from Montreal. That's the accent. And that specific branch had a lot of English clientele, and the English clientele held the wealth. And we were starting to lose those clients because nobody could communicate with them. So they said, hey, you might not know about banking, but you can talk to those clients. So we're going to put you there. So I get in, I'm a manager. I have no clue what to do. So debunking myth number 1, we tend to always think that we have to look up the hierarchy to find our mentors. I looked down. I was the boss of this employee. Her name still is Dolores. She was a wonderful lady, super solutions oriented, always a bright smile, always knows how to get out of a tough situation, how to, turn around somebody who's upset, how to make the clients happy, how to close the sale. She was fantastic. She knew everything there was to know about banking. And I brought all my questions, all my trust to her, and she helped me grow so much. Debunking myth number 2, keeping it to business only. So at that age, that specific year, I had quite a tumultuous love life. So I had just broken up with a long-term boyfriend. I dated someone for just a few months, and then I met the man I was going to marry, all in that one year. And of course, specifically at 25, 26, that took a lot of my mental space. And she could see, you look like you have an extra step today, a little extra spring in your step, or you look like things are bugging you. And we wouldn't talk about my love life for hours, but just the fact that she took a little bit of time to attune to my emotions every now and then meant so much. It built the trust, it built the connection, it helped us kind of act in sync more easily. And as a leader, it also made me want to return the favor to her and to the others, meaning, for example, the branch was opened on Thursday nights. Nobody liked to work the Thursday night. And the previous managers had all said, I'm going home. You guys are hired for this work. I said, you guys have kids. You go home. I'll stay. We didn't need a lot of staff. I wasn't the only one staying, but I gave others the chance to go home to their kids, and I worked the evening. So because I had that mentorship from someone whom I was officially supervising, and it made the performance evaluations interesting. They were not typical, but it erased the lines of who has the power, who's in charge. It made us more of a team. And how can we best use everybody's strengths? How can we best organize everything from sales goals to schedules? How can we organize everything for the greater good? So while I thought that it was going to be my weakness to not know quite so much, I was able to turn it into something that worked for the benefit of the whole branch, and our results showed it. In the region of 25 branches, we were number 24 or 25 when I started, and 2 years later, we were in the top 10. So we made a lot of progress because all the solutions, all the how do we do things around here? How should we reorganize things came from the employees led by Dolores, that knew more and that knew better and that had lived in the trenches for so long. So that's my reverse mentorship story.
Quick question. Did she get a raise?
Yes, she always did. So the way it was done is that I was given a certain number of dollars per hour that I could distribute to my employees. So and every employee had this is the range within which they can be paid, right? So I couldn't have given her all the dollars for the branch, but I always topped her pay scale. I was trying to be fair, but she was contributing so much more than what her job description was offering. And she was also working part-time, which is something that I do to this day, work part-time so I'm available for my family. So see, that mentorship kept with me. So her dollar per hours were not applied to as many hours, so that freed up more for the rest of the team too. Yes.
Wonderful stories. And, we all really like to talk to one another, the four of us. And so we could talk for hours, but we're trying not to, and trying to basically respect a poll that we did. Remember, we're evidence-based. We did a poll to see how long people would like to have podcast episodes. And the answers were roughly half an hour to an hour was the sort of the sweet spot. So we're almost exactly at half an hour. And so I think we're going to wrap it up for this beginning episode. But you now have new mentors, 4 of them, that will provide you guidance. You can also reach us. You can go to lifehabitspodcast.com, and there's a place there for you to submit questions or comments and with regard to what we are talking about on this series. And you can also reach us on all of the socials at Life Habits. And we really, really want to be connected with you. We want to make this more personal, really get a two-way communication going as well. But before we wrap up, I wanted to ask each of my co-hosts to tell a little bit about how you can find them, what their social media and other coordinates are. So maybe starting with Suzanne.
Yeah. I spend my social media time mostly on LinkedIn. So Suzanne Joy Clark, that's where I hang out most. And pursuitadvisory.com is my company.
Great. And Mandy?
The best way to get me would be through my mental health blog, which is www.thoughtsonlifeandlove.com. I'm also on LinkedIn and Insta, but I don't have those to hand, but I could maybe give those to you to put in the website or something.
Sounds good. And last but not least again, MJ.
So I spend my social media time on LinkedIn only. That's one of the ways I make working part-time work for me. So I am MJ Shaar, SHAAR. Most people try to put 1 A's and 2 R's, so don't confuse yourself. SHAAR on LinkedIn. And I also have mjshaar.com.
Awesome. And my coordinates are karelvredenberg.com for most everything. And then Karel Vredenberg, first name, last name, on most of the socials other than what used to be called Twitter. All right. This was a great episode. Thank you to my co-hosts. This is going to be a fun exercise doing this once a month. And we look forward to talking to you all next time. And bye for now. This was our first YouTube video version of the long-running Life Habits podcast, now with a fresh new format and some amazing regular co-hosts. If you enjoyed it and you want to have us do more of these, please hit subscribe so that you can be part of the community. It'll also help people find this YouTube version of the podcast as well. Reach out anytime as well to us at lifehabitspodcast.com. We thank you and we appreciate you.